So, well, I'll start by sharing your screen.
Yes, do that.
Okay.
Let's move this a little bit away.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'll just let you alone and have fun. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, hello everybody. I hope you're having a great meetup here. I feel a little bit like an imposter because I'm mainly using Laravel fresh from the source. And I'm going to talk about something not related to Statamic, though we are going to touch upon it at the end of this talk a little bit. I'm going to talk to you about debugging faster using a tool that I've built called Ray. I'm Freek. I'm a partner and a developer at a Belgian company called Spatie. I'm active on Twitter. My handle is Freek Meurze. I have a blog where I talk about PHP and Laravel development. Excuse me. I've built an uptime tracker called Oh Dear, and this one doesn't only check your homepage, but it will actually crawl your entire website, and it will send you a notification when any of the links is down. And together with my team, I've also launched Flare, which is an exception tracker specifically built for Laravel applications. Now, before heading into the world of debugging, I want to say a few words about the open source work that Spatie does. We have released about 300 packages now, mainly Laravel and PHP packages. They have been downloaded about 180 million times in total, and they are being downloaded about 10 million times a month, which I think is pretty nice for a small team as ours. You can find all of our open source projects on our website, and I'm pretty sure there's something there for your next project. Now, those packages, they aren't entirely free. There's a special license on them called postcardware, which means if any of these gets into your production environment, you are required by law to send us a postcard. And on our website, we have beautiful pictures of all the beautiful postcards that you send us. Now, there are also a couple of paid products and video courses that we sell on our site, and one of them is Ray, and we are going to talk a little bit more about that. But it's not going to be a sales talk. We're also going to dive into some technical details. Let's first start a little bit by talking about debugging in general. In general, your options are this. You can use dump debugging, where you use functions like dump, die, info, and there are probably also a couple of others, print R, for instance, or var dump, or you could use xdebug. Now, the start on the work of Ray was really triggered by this tweet by Dirk Rittans, who is the author of Xdebug. PHP developers that don't use Xdebug for debugging are amateurs. Now, the tweet was pretty popular, but I don't necessarily agree with that. And I also know Derek a little bit. He doesn't mean it as harshly as he put it in that tweet. And after that tweet, he immediately sent this one, where he says he's still a fan of Xdebug, but that amateur thing, he doesn't mention that anymore. And sure enough, there are a lot of cool things that Xdebug gives us. So for those that don't know you, Xdebug is a step debugger, and you can basically see the state of your application at a point in time. So you can just freeze the code at a certain line, and you can see all of the variables, all the content of the variables where that are currently present in memory, and you can also see how you got there. So you can see the backtrace, you can see which functions were called. And of course, you can also execute the next line and the next line, so you can slowly go through your code. And I mainly use this when I'm debugging a very, very hard problem where I really need to see everything, but this does rarely happen. There's, I think, one downside of Xdebug. It could be a little bit hard to install, depending on the mood of the debugging gods of that day. Sometimes for me, it just works, and sometimes for some reason, it doesn't work for me. Now, I know that Derek made a lot of improvements in the latest version of Xdebug, so it should be more stable. But still, it's installing an extension onto your system, which can be a little bit daunting for a lot of developers. Now, let's talk a little bit about dumb debugging. There are a lot of good things to be said. So I think the main part is it is just so easy to do. If you want to dump debug, you just say dump this, or you do a die statement or a DD statement or whatever you prefer, and you get the value on your screen. It is that easy. And one cool thing that people overlook a little bit about dump debugging is the fact that you can see the state of your application from multiple points in time. So you can put multiple dump statements, maybe at the beginning of the request and a couple a little bit later in the request, or maybe in a loop. And when you run your script or do your request, you can see everything that you've dumped from the entire life cycle of the application, whereas Xdebug only stays at one point in time. And I think this is what makes dump debugging so damn useful, because you can basically look at your application from multiple points in time at the same time. It's a little bit philosophical, but I think this is like the core why people like dump debugging. Now, there are also a couple of bad things about dump debugging. If you have multiple statements in your script, or if you have like a lot of output, then if you're debugging a request, that output can break your HTML page, and it can get a little bit confusing. It can also get confusing when you're running something like a test or a CLI script multiple times, and you're debugging maybe via the log or via the terminal. If you have like 10 debugging statements in there and you run your code maybe 5 or 6 times, then it can be hard to see which output of the debug is for this particular run that you're debugging. You don't know where for this execution the first debugging line was. And it can be a little bit hard to track down where certain things are. There are also a couple of very ugly things about dump debugging. So after you fixed your code, you should clean up after yourself. So if you have a couple of dump statements that are across multiple files, then it can be a little bit hard to track down where you've put them. And this can be a problem, because if you forget to remove one of those, then you can push a debugging statement to production. And if that debugging statement was maybe outputting some environment variable, then you're now exposing sensitive information. And this is something that you do not want. Now, static analysis can help a little bit with this. Most tools have an option to say, hey, I never want to see this function in my code. It can help, but of course, not everybody is using static analysis for this. Now, your options are dump debugging and Xdebug, which are a little bit different. And we've gone over the pros and the cons of both. But I thought, wouldn't it be nice if there was like a way between them? So an option where we could use dump debugging, but without the bad or the ugly sides. And that is what we have created. We call the thing that we created, it's a desktop tool, Ray, and our tagline for that is dump debugging evolved. So if you do love dump debugging, you are probably going to love Ray. So I've already said that Ray takes the good parts of the dump debugging. It is a beautiful desktop application. And instead of using dump or DD or print R or whatever, you're going to use a function called Ray to debug everything. And this function is provided by a free package that you can install into your application. And you can not only use that to dump stuff, but a whole lot of things more. There are a lot of advanced features. You can see all the queries, you can measure performance, you can see mailables. I'm going to show a few of Ray's tricks in a few seconds. The tool itself is paid, but there's a free trial that you can use. I'll showcase the website a little bit later. Now, I've talked a lot about this, but let's start using it so you can get a little bit of a feel of it. So I'm here in a simple Laravel application, and I'm using this application to basically test out all of the functionality of Ray. I'm going to use a simple artisan command here that I can execute to make some Ray calls, but you should imagine that you're debugging something and that you're putting Ray calls all over the place in your own application. You can see that this is a very simple Laravel application, and I've already installed the Laravel Ray package here. I'm using dev main because, yeah, I'm using this application to develop the Ray package itself. So let's start with this. So how can you send something to Ray? Now, before we send something to Ray, we should make sure that Ray actually is running. So let me start up Ray. And this is the desktop application. You can see that it is very simple. By default, it always stays on top. So if I go to PHP Storm here, you can see that it is still there. And I have some hotkeys here to with my keyboard just show and hide it. Okay, let's send something to here. So maybe hello everybody. Let me move this a little bit up and make it a tiny bit smaller. Hello everybody. And let's execute this. And I already made a mistake. Sorry about that. Let's clear Ray again. Yeah, there we have it. Hello, everybody. I've just sent it to Ray. So you can already see that that we can do some neat stuff here. We set here where this Ray call actually was made. So if after cleaning up, you want to, if after you fix your bug, you want to clean up after yourself, you can use this to track down that debugging statement. You can also click it. Let me go to another file. And if I click demo, then you go to there. That's how that works. It's pretty simple. Now, this function, it can basically take everything that you want. If you want to give it an array, sure, let's do this. Run it, and now you get that hello everybody again in an array. Of course, you could also make like a separate Ray call, and you can even add complex object. I think the app object in a Laravel application is about the one of the most complex objects that we have. Let's send it to Ray, and sure enough, we have the entire object here, and I can click things open if I'm more interested into that. Now, imagine that you're debugging something here and you're logging things, and it can be a little bit confusing as, yeah, is this now from the last time I executed the command, or is this from the last time I executed the command? Where did I actually begin? And I think that it would be very nice if we would just clean up the screen whenever we start a new debugging attempt. So you can do that with Ray with adding here clear screen. So now I'm going to clear Ray screens whenever I perform something here. So let's do that again. Now I can see that I just have that hello everybody array and my new thing. If I do it again, I still have 3 items here. So that's how that works. You can even also name your screen. So instead of clear screen, you could also do new screen. It's an alias, they're interchangeable. My test screen, maybe log something else here, hi, or something like that. And let's that. And then you can see that this is my test screen. And you can use this button to go back to the previous screen. So you can just go through multiple attempts. Now, I almost always forget to demonstrate this little feature. Let me clear the screen. In the preferences, some people find this the most important feature of Ray. You can switch to dark mode. So if you really prefer dark mode, then you can do it, and you can see that everything is beautifully in dark mode as well. But usually I prefer light mode myself, so I'm going to go back. If some of you have trouble seeing colors, there's also a color blind mode. Colors that makes me think of these little guys here on top, so let's discover those. If you are debugging a lot of, if you are debugging and you need to have like a lot of statements, wouldn't it be nice if we could just highlight one of those? Well, you can do that with Ray by just giving them a color. So I can make this one green, maybe I can make this one blue, and let's demo this again. And now you can see that we immediately focus on these colored ones. These rounds at the top, you can use them to filter the output. So only the green ones now, only the blue ones, or only the blue and green ones. And now we're back to everything. That's how that works. Now, in the interest of time, I didn't prepare this in the demo, but I think I maybe actually should, because it's a case of showmanship, but yeah, it's too late to prepare it now. I'm just going to say it. So here I'm going to just log things to Ray locally. But if you push this to production, by default, Ray won't output anything because there's no application waiting for you. But you can actually just connect to other servers here via SSH. And if there's a Ray call in the code on production, then you will see it locally on your Mac or PC. So you can use Ray to remotely debug some things as well. And I use this in kind of emergencies instead of going through production logs. I basically add a few Ray statements, push that to production, connect to it, and to see what's actually going on there in a request. So these are like the basic functionalities of Ray, but we actually do a whole lot of things more. But I think that this alone is already much, much better than just getting your output on the console. We have the screens, we can hide stuff, we can group things, we can programmatically clear the screen, and so on. Let me show a couple of more advanced stuff. Let's go to the log command. That is a fun one. So if you log something, and that is what we are going to do here. We are going to first get a new screen, and then we are going to use the info function to log something to the application log. And you can also do that via the facade. Let's try that out. Things that are logged are also being displayed in Ray. And also notice that we can also point you back to where things were logged. So there's no Ray statement here, but you can see that this log originated from here. So it's easy to track down where things are logged. Now, if you're using the log driver in a Laravel application, and you, this is a comment, of course, and you send something, send a mailable in your application, then Laravel will actually write it to the log. And we can then display the HTML here, but we've gone the extra mile. So if you send a mail and it's being logged to the log, then we will actually just render out that mail. So you can just see the output of your mail right here in Ray. And I use this a lot, actually. The most traditional example is, for instance, for testing a password reset in your application. If you're locally testing that out, and Laravel sends a mail with a link to reset password, then I can just see it here in Ray and just click that link there. So it's incredibly handy, and there's basically no setup needed for this. Let me show you another one. There are a lot of features, so I only can share a few here. I think logging queries is also a very handy one. So here we are going to take a new screen again. I'm going to tell to Ray, hey, I want to show every query from now on. Then I'm going to make a couple of queries, and then, and this is optional, of course, I can say, hey, this is enough, stop showing me all of the queries. So let's test that out. So this is the query command. And here you can see what happens then. We see the query, we see the connection name. We also see how much time that it took. And this is something incredibly useful as well. You can see where the query has been made, where that has been executed. So this one comes from this line. And again, there's no Ray call here. We use some clever tricks to determine where this query actually originates from. And this can be very, very handy. You can also use show queries like this. Either you just don't give it anything and then it'll keep showing queries until you do stop showing queries, or you could give it a callable and then it will show you every query that is inside of this callable. So you can just call something else here, and every query that gets executed in this callable, it will be shown in Ray. It's pretty handy. There's also a little bit of a sibling function, I should say. There's also count queries, where you can see how many queries were executed within a certain closure here. So let's do that again, and if everything's good, I see the query count here. So again, I think this is very nice. Let's maybe do a couple more. I think a very cool one is, but my eye doesn't fall in it. It's here, is the pause functionality. So basically, we can pause your code, and you don't need an extension for this at all. Why would you want to pause your code? Well, I find this handy for testing side effects. If, for instance, your code makes an API call or writes something to the database or sends out a mail, and maybe it does that in a loop. Maybe you want to check the state of your database or the external API after maybe one iteration of the loop. So if you want that, you can basically pause your code at that particular moment. So let's see how pausing works in Ray. It's incredibly simple. We just take a new screen here. Then we are going to send something to Ray, and we are going to pause Ray. And here I have some statements that we're not going to see initially. So Ray after pause, we're not going to see this in Ray, and that echo ended, we're not going to see that in the terminal. The command will basically just hang. Let's try that out. Let's pause our code. So here our code is paused. We don't see that after the pause, and we see that our command is still running here. It's basically doing nothing. If I press continue here, then we get after the pause, and then our command ends. So again, very frictionless to just pause your code. Now let's do that again. And you can also stop your code. And if your code stops, then we will internally basically stop your code by throwing an exception. And exceptions are also rendered very pretty in Ray. So let's do that. So this is how exceptions get rendered. You get a nice snippet, and here you can see all of the frames of the stack frame, and you can go through each of these when I click edit. So this is how exceptions work. Let's see, which one do I want to highlight? I bet that a lot of you use antlers, But if you use Laravel's default templating system, which I guess some of you might also do, then you're rendering Blight. And in this project, I have a couple of Blight templates. But let's start using this one. So if you want to debug something that is in your Blight file, it can be a little bit tricky to do. Of course, you could go to the controller and try to do it there, but if you want to see the state of variables in a Blight file, I used to do it like this. I just opened up a PHP block and basically did dump the variable that I wanted to do here. Now I know this is only 3 lines of code, but I think we can do better than that. So I have here prepared a little test blade, and you can see here that this is the way that we do it using Ray. We just have a blade directive called Ray that we can just use. So if everything's good, I also have a blade directive command here. And you can see that will render out that that test. So let's try it. Blade, and here you can see hi everyone, and that is coming from here in the Blade file. So that's how that works. Let's check a little bit on time. I think I only have 10 minutes more. Let me do maybe one more of these ones and then do, I don't know I have time enough for a code dive, but I'll explain very simply how the communication works. But let's do one more demo here. So with Ray, it's also very easy to make a small profiling. So if you want to know how much time a certain piece of code needs to run, Ray can help you with that as well. And this is how you can do it. So first, we get a new screen. Then we are going to use the measure function. And if you call measure for the first time, then we are going to start measuring time. So then you do stuff. And then we're going to call measure again, and then it will show you the time between this measure and the previous measure. And then if you call measure again, then it will show you the time between this one and this one. So let's try that out. So I'm going to measure some of the things. So we're measuring, we're 1 second later, and now we're 2 seconds later. So here, the first measure, this takes 1 second. Here, the total time at this point is 3 seconds, and the time since the last call is 2 seconds. And as a bonus, we also give you the amount of memory this took. And of course, you can go back to where this measure was taken. Because, again, I'm in one file here, but you probably, if you're profiling stuff, you probably put measure in different files. So this makes it very easy to just hunt it down again. Okay, let's maybe talk a very, very short amount of time at how we communicate here between my Laravel application and Ray. Well, it's actually very simple. In Ray, there is an HTTP server that is listening on a certain port. And basically what happens here is that inside of the Ray package, let me go to that real quickly. We have a client here, and that client will basically use curl to send an HTTP request to Ray. So it's just HTTP, it's nothing more. But we did something cool, I think, that maybe some of you who already know Ray don't necessarily know. So imagine you have a call like this one. Ray, hello, everybody. And let's make it green and maybe do next one and make this one red. Now, you must think, when are we doing this call to let me first get this out. Maybe also do a new screen here. I'll do it manually for now. You can ask yourself, hey, when is actually a message being sent? Is it being sent after this green? How does it know that this is like the last thing on the chain? Because I can also do other things. I can make this large if I want to do as well. So array, do a new screen here. So I can do that again. So yeah, when does it actually send something to there? Does the large thing send something? Does Ray itself send thing? How does it know when this change stops? The answer is actually pretty simple. We sent a Ray request after the initial Ray, after green, after large, after this one, after red one. So here we are making 5 HTTP requests to Ray. Now, how do we know inside of Ray that we want to make this line green? Well, let me show you how that works. So if you send something to Ray, then it's going to give you an instance of Ray back. And inside of this instance, we have generated a unique token. And if you just use that again, because this has a token, a new one won't be generated. And the Ray client, it will know, hey, this is something with an existing token. I should apply this on the thing that I've already sent. So let me show you that in action. So if I sleep here, then first we are going to see it not green. And now it has become green after 2 seconds. Maybe you didn't catch that. So let's maybe do another color here so that we change color twice like that. So now it's green and it should be red. And that is basically how that works. So I could go into a lot of details about this, but the essence is that we just make an HTTP call to there and replace things when necessary. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So let's start closing down. I've said a lot during this presentation, but there's actually a lot more to discover. There are, I think a lot of functionality in there. And we've documented it all. You can find the documentation on our company website at docs.ray. I should also say that we didn't only build this for framework agnostic PHP and Laravel, but there are also integrations for WordPress, Yi2, Craft CMS, and even other languages like JavaScript, Bash, if that's your thing, Go, or that fancy new Alpine JS. They're all libraries to easily have a Ray function to send things to Ray. Now, this is the commercial website. So if you want to try it out, go to myray.app and you can download a free trial here. And it's optimized for M1 if you have one of those fancy new, very fast processors. You'll be also very happy to know that there's a little bit of love for Ray in Statamic itself. There is a modifier Ray that you can use in your templates to easily send things to Ray this way. And I think this is very, very nice. I believe it has been contributed by the next speaker, so you should thank him if you like this modifier. So that is everything that I got for you. I hoped that you liked it. If you want to know more about Ray, to go to the website. And I'm also available on Twitter for any questions. I'm happy to help. So that's it for me. Have a great meetup.
Thanks a lot, Freek. That has been amazing.
I hope you liked it.
A lot. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for having me, Jonas, and see you the next time.
See you. Bye.
Bye, man.